Thank you, John.
All right, thank you.
So for our virtual people, if you can make sure to answer the polling questions so you can get your pesticide credit license, that would be great. We're going to move right into our next speaker, Sharon Sorby. She's our coordinator for the Flannery County Weed Board. She's been with us for over 30 years.
Thank you, Loretta. Loretta's been with me for closing in on 30 years. So.
Me too.
She's my work wife. She keeps me in line as best she can. So,
1 second.
It says it's sharing.
oh,
We were sharing the wrong window.
wrong screen.
Wrong one.
Oh,
Yep. Okay. Wait. Then we need to.
there. Yes, it is. Okay. Okay, so, you know, I've been doing this a long time, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, everybody knows this stuff, so, you know, I never really know what the best thing to focus on is. And putting this program together, Mary's new, and through the process of putting this workshop together, it dawned on me that, you know, I'm looking out there, there's a whole bunch of bright, shiny new faces. So it's like, yeah, I'm still here, but you guys out there, you're new. And so, and based on your questions to John, you're not familiar with a lot of this. And so that's one of the things. It's always been a weed board priority to do lots of education. I'm not the greatest at it. We have Mary, we had Lisa, she was good. We have Mary, she's outstanding. And I see good things going forward to help give you the information you need and want. And we can work together. Like John says, this job is way too big for any one organization or person. But if we all work together, well, something that was, he mentioned a silver bullet. And in weed control, we've always talked about, oh, the elusive silver bullet. What's going to get rid of this weed? What's going to get rid of this infestation? And long ago, he's since passed, there was a weed scientist who came up with a term of silver shot. And that is, if you are persistent, consistent, persistent, and adapt your management to the response of your weeds, then you will have a level of success that you can live with. The probability of actually getting rid of that plant is not extremely high, but maybe that's not the best objective. The best objective is to get it into a population size that you can live with. So anyway, so with flowering rush, that's kind of our objective. Sure, it'd be great to get rid of it, but this infestation came from Flathead Lake in Montana. And the first plants were identified in 1964. So that means that the population was big enough for somebody to notice. It had been there a little bit longer. But it took 50 years for that infestation to grow big enough to start moving out of Flathead Lake into the Clark Fork and then down into the Pend Oreille system. So the nice thing is that we're getting it kind of as a new thing. We've had it for, you know, a good 10 years now. We have the information based on what happened in Flathead Lake to tell us we got to do something about flowering rush. You can't just say, oh, you know, isn't that a pretty flower? The biggest impact for you folks is the way it increases sedimentation. Now, milfoil increases sedimentation, but it does it at a rate probably 10 times faster than natural. Flowering rush does it like 1,000 times. So something that would take 1,000 years to fill in with sediment it would take flowering rush about 10 years. So that's a real problem. In Flathead Lake, there are docks and boathouses that are no longer usable because they're on dry land. So I don't know how many of you people have recently had the pilings sunk and installed a dock. It was probably a pretty hefty investment. Well, imagine having to do that again in 10 years because your shoreline is out past where you can get your boat into your dock. That's the kind of thing that concerns me for all of you. The reason we have the agencies involved is because of, you probably noticed John's slide with the northern pike. They've done feeding studies with them, cut them open, and their primary diet are the salmon. And of course, we don't have salmon. We have kokanee, which are salmon, and we have bull trout, which are a type of salmon. So, and the thing is you've heard of how big a pike is. They have these fish in them like this, in their guts, and they'll have 5 of them in their guts. So it's like, these are just huge predators on a species of concern to the wildlife biologists, and that the state has put a lot of money into. We have the salmon restoration funds. Those are, I have no idea how many millions, probably over $1 billion over the last 20 years have been invested into habitat restoration for salmon and basically, habitat stuff for salmon. And, these fish are coming along and eating them. And their favorite hiding place is in flowering rush. So that's where they hide, and that's where they target those salmon fish. So this weed escaping into the Columbia River for our, technical sea-run salmon is a huge concern. That's why we're getting a little bit of money for it. So, I'll talk to John later, but supposedly we will be getting $38,000 from DNR to help with our flowering rush program. We were awarded $62,000 from Ecology for this program, and PUD helps with some funding, as well as Seattle City Light contributes for the Boundary Reservoir. And then this year, special, we have a match from the Army Corps engineers. And so we will be having some added funding for that. And for the first time since I started dealing with this in 2014, I have hope that we'll be able to address all the sites that occur on the river. Because in the past, it's been kind of like a pick and choose, and we'll look at that right now. So how come this isn't going forward? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, but it depends on.
Oh. Okay, so maybe because I just talk too much. Well, I get to see.
Yeah. Weird.
So while they're working on that, just a reminder, if you came in late to sign in, check your name off at the registration right at the door, and there's a bag for you at the door too. And also in your little bag, there is your blue ticket for the raffle items. And so don't lose those, otherwise you won't be able to get your number called.
We'll just try sharing the entire screen and see if we can get it to work. Okay. Then how do you make it the...
It is. Well, it is up there, but...
Oh. Not on the big screen. I don't know what that means. Oh, there it goes. Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, okay, we're identifying flowering rush. So, as John talked about, it's kind of a tough one to pick up sometimes, but there are some very key things that help. I mean, the bloom, it's pretty, it's obvious, you see that, and it'll just whip your head around and give you whiplash. But it rarely blooms. So the main thing you'll see are the leaves that stick out of the water, and those have a very distinct color green. It's dark, but it has a real coppery undertone that just gives it, well, as one contractor put it one time, tall, dark, and menacing. So it's very menacing. Anyway, it spreads by primarily by fragmentation. The seed count is really, really low, and so these bulbils, little tiny projections on the root, as well as you can kind of see them up in the flower head, those break off, and those will produce new plants. As well as, you know, the whole rhizome, which I remember pulling with some kids one time, and the kids were looking, what's all this rope doing floating here? And that's basically what the roots look like. Is the rhizomes. They look like a rope. And so those will also spread and create new plants. So anyway, where has it been? Yeah. I gotta look at it. There. So yes. So yeah, it looks like it's pretty much all over. You notice a gap in the middle, and that's because we are not collecting data or doing work on tribal frontage. They have their own program, and so we respect that space. And yeah. So it looks like it's everywhere, but this is 5 years of data. So it just means that over 5 years, we pretty much covered the river. That's good, because this is, and then it also includes spots for yellow flag iris and purple loosestrife, which we are not aggressively treating the yellow flag. There is quite a bit of it. And that's the first year, you know, I really tried, but it's like too much money was being spent on that and not leaving enough money for the flowering rush, which was a higher priority. So purple loosestrife has always been a priority here. It's always been on the river since I started working here. How many people have seen it? Anybody? Anybody seen it? Okay, so a couple people. And that's it out of, you know, and even if you'd been here for a long time, because we've just really worked hard to keep it off. And that's the thing, we don't have a boat to travel up and down the river. And so it's basically been from where we go back to sites we've seen it before, or we know it's been thick upriver in Idaho. We work with them on the biocontrols. Those are very effective on purple loosestrife. How do we treat it? We either spray it with, kind of depends on the site, but we've used an aquatic labeled glyphosate. We've used an imazapyr, an aquatic labeled imazapyr. That's kind of a newer one we just started using. And when the only time we've treated it with milestone has been when it was up on dry, where we wouldn't be getting it in the water because it wasn't labeled well, yeah, it wasn't labeled at that time for use in water. It now is. So we could use it where the overspray. And all three of them are extremely effective. So it's not a hard plant to spray out. It's when you get that infestation like you saw in his picture, And in my next picture, I think.
We had a question online about what's the difference between the green stars and the red dots.
Okay, so the red dots are primarily put in, it's by the contractor for diving, pulling. And the green stars are only for one of the, the green stars are for the herbicide treatments along the shoreline that they used a different data collection system, and so it just created that different look. So this is where we worked last year. Last year we did not have a lot of funding, so it just didn't go very far. But that shows you, we hit the priority areas, and that's all you can do, and then keep moving and hoping for the best. Yeah.
What do you use to get rid of the yellow flag iris?
Well, in the past we've used the glyphosate, but a couple years ago Seattle said, yeah, you can't use that anymore, so we went to the invasive, and that worked really well. We okay?
It's not showing up again on. It's fine on Zoom, but it's not changing on the TV.
Oh, up here?
Yeah.
Oops, shoot.
Oh no, what did you do?
I hit the enter button. Don't do that. Don't hit the enter button. So apparently, this isn't.
Yeah, it's not changing on the TV screen. We're in photography.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry that you're not seeing this in the room, but in this map, the areas where we worked, there's a few spots north of Ione. No? Okay. And in the River Bend area and to the north, and then down a couple spots outside of Newport, and then between Usk and Cusick, or Dulcana and Cusick, actually. So, what else do I want to say about this? Okay. Oh, now it worked?
Now it changed.
Okay. So now you can see the see where we worked last year. And last year we had, I don't know, it was right around $50,000. And that's what I figured, 150 we should be able to cover the river. And if everything works according to how it's supposed to, and provided timing wise I can get my people in the water, then we should be able to have more success this year. Okay, I have to skip this blank slide that I inserted. And, okay. Yeah, I couldn't.
Oh.
Yeah, what was I trying to say here? Yeah, really. Okay, so this year what the plans are is, like I just said, that we should have enough money to hopefully treat everything, at least, look and get a good handle on where it is. The dry frontages and backwaters will be treated with herbicide, and that's if you live on the river. We just sent the notice out Wednesday that we'll be doing this work, so hopefully you have that, or we'll shortly have it. And then the in-water populations, again, going with our divers, because that's right now the most effective way to do it. When you talk about eradication, Eradication basically means rip it out by the roots. So if you're using herbicide, you want the herbicide to go and kill the roots. And for in-water treatments, they don't have an herbicide that does that. They have one that'll burn the top off, and that will weaken the roots. So it's part of your silver shot, but it's not really part of a good eradication program. Now, when treating the dry land with herbicide, we can use products that kill the roots. And so that's the ideal. And this picture was actually taken in, I don't know, 2014, I think. And now it's, well, at least the last time I saw it, which granted is a couple of years ago, it's pretty clear. It's much more clear than this.
Sure. When you guys, you guys work with the Corps of Engineers and the water levels, like in the river, for bringing the water level down to where you can eradicate?
No, no. And that's where in Lake Oreille, especially the float yard, the drift yard, they've, and you know, Terry, I'm sure will be talking about this, they've had some very successful treatments there on dry ground. And it's like when the plants are real small and just starting up in the spring, because that's when their water is low. Ours is still really high. So we can't use that method here. Right now, although last winter we had some pretty low water, but, and right now the water is pretty low. But this is the time of year we have to work with, so.
Sure. I just wondered, because I noticed there right before 4th of July, the river was real high. And Oreille came up on the Idaho side, got real high.
Did it?
And it stayed high, where ours has lost level. So I just wondered if it was something being controlled by the dams that, you know.
It was being controlled by the dams. You know, the great mystery I heard about was Oreille was going to drop the water level so that they could scrub the shoreline. And that's a whole nother subject. When you want to hear about Didymo, we'll talk about that another time. But yeah, so there's lots of things that influence the water level. The primary is the salmon downriver. The Oreille River system supplies 1/5 of the Columbia River system's water. So we're a real important part of that whole resource and system. Anyway. So, purple loosestrife and yellow flag iris for 20 this year. Again, we've never had, well, I'm not changing there.
We're experiencing a really long
Lag. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. So that's what it is a lag.
And they're trying to work on
Speeding it up. Okay. So, huh? Yeah, it's a slot sheen. Yeah. Good luck with that. So I have this really pretty picture of these flowers, which reminds me of my main message for people is when you're planting your water features, planting your gardens, landscapes, when you live on water, it's to never plant a non-native species where it can escape into a natural water system. All that does is create problems. And that's basically what happened with all three of these plants: flowering rush, purple loosestrife, and yellow flag iris. They were, you know, pretty plants, planted them down by the creek so they could look at them, and it's just led to problems after that. Anyway, so this year, our purple loosestrife will kind of go as it has gone. We have several sites on the river that we visit. There was one that, I don't know, we missed it for way too long, and it was a fairly sizable infestation. The landowner brought it to our attention, and we've been treating it since. also well mixed in with the iris. So we're getting both of those at that one spot. The rest of the iris, well, if it is adjacent to where we're treating for flowering rush, we'll treat it, or the purple loosestrife will treat it, but we're not going to go out and actively survey and treat for that just because it's a lower priority. Now, John said it spreads fast, and well, you know, speed is really relative. And compared to flowering rush, as Taj Mahal said, yellow flag iris is built for comfort, ain't built for speed. It'll move, it'll expand, but it does it much more slowly than flowering rush does. So, and its primary means of spread is by seed, and it does have these kind of magnificent pods. They're about that big, give or take, and you know, they hang off the flowering stalk where the flowers were, and they're lined with seeds like a corn cob, and those seeds will last for quite a while. They've found them buried in the mud, 100 years down in the mud, brought them up, and there were still seeds in that pod that would sprout. So, well, we still haven't moved, have we? I'm out of things to say. Yeah. So anyway, both of these species will be treated in the boundary reservoir. So again, my another message slide is to avoid spreading invasive species, clean, drain, and dry your boat and other recreational gear. And we actually got a grant to paint that message on some of our boat launches. So look for those. And then my last slide that nobody could see is in the room is our sponsors for this project. Excuse me, the agencies that we work with, and our two contractors that will be doing the work this year on the river, and one of the companies that manufactures the herbicide. Questions? Everybody's asleep or stunned. Hi, Kurt.
Sharon, Kurt now. And I just thought I would comment a little bit more on the river flow in the Proje River, because there's quite a few phone calls that we get this time of year. So, as you know, if you operate a dam, you have to have a license by the federal government, and we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on our license. So the Proje River is what we call a flow of the river, where we have a reservoir center based out of Seattle and Portland. So we're not a reservoir. We don't get to back water up like the big dams on the mid-sea or even Seattle City Line and Boundary. Whatever Albany gives us, it's got to go out the other end at Fox. In emergency situations, we can back up water no more than 2 feet on Albany, and we got to have a darn pretty good reason for that. So it's sometimes confusing. People say, hey, how come Lake Proje's got all this water? We're out here wading up to our knees clear out to the middle of the river. So we'd love to have some of their water, but it's not up for us to decide. So they build their lake level up, and then it used to be the first Friday after Labor Day, they would start to release Proje lake level. Now they put that off towards the end of the month of September before they let that water go, and we see our water flows come back up. So it's kind of a beauty and the beast thing, and so we have little control of that. So, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to. Yep. What's that? My name's Kurt Knapp, and I'm the commissioner of the Public Utility District.
Thank you. I have a question.
Yep.
Does anyone, does Seattle, do they have any restrictions about water in and out? I mean, you guys said you have to let it out, but how about Boundary?
Yeah, Boundary, everybody answers to the river control center. So you don't,
Okay.
nobody gets to.
So there's a discussion going on about the water level on the river and the role of the dams and what they're allowed, what they're not allowed. A little technical. Nothing about weeds.
They through that peak, you know, make it through the day at night, and then they start backing that water up against our dam again. And they do that over and over and over. And it's a pretty slick reservoir they have. It's a lot of rocks, a lot of granite, pretty deep. At one time, we call it the river turns on its edge. It goes from maybe 200 feet wide to 50 feet wide and 200 feet deep. So there's very little erosion issues they have to deal with, and they do that. We've all heard that story about the kayak that's put in at Medley Falls Park, and they do this beautiful slope down to Boundary Dam. Boundary turns their power on, the reservoir goes down, and now they can't get home, so they end up having to stay down there. So it's a pretty interesting operation to have, but everything has to be okay through.
But they have limits to the how much they can take out today.
Yeah.
Hey, Kurt, what I was getting at with Sharon was, if you guys are controlling through what you're being told to do,
Right.
is there a way to coordinate to where treatment or eradication of these areas, you know, knowing that, hey, this is our time period, we're going to be dropping down to these levels, this is your time to attack this stuff. Is there some way to coordinate all that? I mean, do you guys work together that way?
And Scott's here, you know, fish biologist, he's been with us, so he has a lot of information too. But yeah, I mean, we're willing to coordinate all we can that we can do to get along. But you know, again, we have 20 reservoirs. We get water from the Continental Divide all the way through our dam, and then we dump it in Portland's backyard. And so we have little say-so. When we have that high water runoff, usually the second week in June, we shut our dam down. There's been times, I think 2 years ago, we shut our dam down for 3 months. The water was so high that we had no drop. In theory, you could have drove a boat over, we don't recommend that. And then as the water flows start to release, we get less and less water. So, but yeah, whatever we do, but again, we have 22 reservoirs all along. Everybody's got to answer it, because they all want more water. The Priest Lake, not Priest Lake, but Lake Monterey, they got a pretty good organization up there, and they fight like heck, and they keep their water up. And a lot of it is related around their fish issues and kokanee and spawning. But it's kind of aggravating for us when they say, you know, we had to cancel 2 of our yacht races because we couldn't get the yachts off. We're like, we don't have water to swim at down here, so we'll give you a box of things.
Yeah, and that's, PUD is never really the issue, and that's with a lot of this. We can, just by paying attention, coordinating actually with Albany Dam to, they have a real good website you can go to and look up the water flows and everything. And so coordinating with that is more helpful for knowing our water levels and saying, okay, now's the time to send out the herbicide applicators, now's the time to send out the divers.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, because of our technical difficulties, we are going to kind of change things up on the agenda schedule.